With over 50 years of existence and dozens of products created, AMD has known success in the semiconductor industry only in recent years, starting as a licensed chip manufacturer for giants such as Intel. Subsequently, AMD began to produce its own chips, introducing the first x86-64 chip in 2003, overtaking Intel in the market. Since then, AMD started developing competitive variants of AMD processors. Intel and AMD have a cross-licensing agreement under which Intel allows AMD to produce x86 processors and AMD allows Intel to use the x86-64 instruction set. So, in 2017, AMD launched the Ryzen range, the most popular line of AMD processors of all time, quickly becoming a strong competitor for Intel Core. The Ryzen range is currently in its 5th generation and includes Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, Ryzen 9, and Ryzen Threadripper with up to 64 cores. The first generation of processors used the Zen microarchitecture and received the code name Summit Ridge. This generation used a 14nm FinFET processor, being more energy efficient and capable of executing more instructions per cycle. Also, the first generation of Ryzen was based on the SMT, simultaneous multi-threading architecture, allowing each core to run 2 threads. The desktop and mobile Ryzen chips use the AM4 socket, offering DDR4 support. The high-end desktop Threadripper chips use the TR4 socket. The top of the range of this generation includes the Threadripper 1900X models with 8 cores, 16 threads clocked at 3.8 GHz, Threadripper 1920X at a frequency of 3.5 GHz, 12 cores and 24 threads, and the Threadripper 1950X model that has a frequency of 3.4 GHz, 16 cores and 32 threads. The following year, AMD released the 2nd generation of Ryzen processors based on the 12nm Zen Plus microarchitecture. The Zen Plus processors of this generation use the same sockets as those of the previous generation. Zen Plus uses GlobalFoundries' 12nm manufacturing process and optimized variant of the 14nm process previously used on Zen, but with minor design rule changes. Process optimization allowed the 12nm Zen Plus to clock around 6% more or lower power consumption by 10% when at the same frequency. The top of the range of this generation includes the Threadripper 2920X and Threadripper 2950X models, both with a frequency of 3.5 GHz, 12 cores, 24 threads, respectively 16 cores and 32 threads. The other 2 models, Threadripper 2970WX and Threadripper 2990WX, have a frequency of 3 GHz, 24 cores and 48 threads, respectively 32 cores and 64 threads. The 3rd generation of Ryzen processors was launched in 2019 and is powered by the Zen 2 microarchitecture manufactured by TSMC's 7nm MOSFET node. The new generation included variants with 6 and 8 cores in the Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 7 product lines, but also a new Ryzen 9 line, offering AMD's first mainstream desktop processors with 12 and 16 cores. The 3rd generation comes with significant performance improvements with an average increase in IPC of 15%, a doubling of L3 cache capacity, floating point throughput, op cache capacity, and infinity fabric bandwidth. Zen 2 also uses a multi-chip module design where the processor's input-output components are placed on a separate die, called a chiplet, offering advantages in scalability and manufacturability. Socket-wise, most of AMD's Ryzen consumer products use the same socket AM4 as before, and the top-of-the-line Threadripper and Threadripper Pro models use the larger STRX4 and SWRX8 sockets, which support additional memory channels and PCI lanes express. Therefore, the top of the range is the AMD Ryzen Threadripper Pro launched in 2020, which offers security solutions for the Pro range, PCIe 4 connectivity, but also a number of cores never seen before. For example, the Ryzen Threadripper Pro 3995WX comes with a frequency of 2.7 GHz, 64 cores, and 128 threads.
This is the AMD Ryzen 9 5900X. 12 cores, 24 threads, and a boost up to 4.8 GHz.
In 2020, AMD released the Zen 3 architecture for the Ryzen 5000 series processors and uses TSMC's 7nm process. The Ryzen 5000 family also uses a new core design and cache topology, offering higher boost frequencies with up to 19% more IPC than Zen 2 processors, as well as lower cache latency. The consumer models come up on the same socket, AM4, the top model in this class being the Ryzen 9 5950X equipped with 16 cores and 32 execution threads, capable of reaching a boost frequency of 4.9 GHz. In 2020, AMD launched the top models in the high-end desktop workstation class, namely Ryzen Threadripper Pro 5945WX, 5955WX, 5965WX, 5975WX, and Threadripper Pro 5995WX. The latter has 64 cores and 128 threads, being able to reach a boost frequency of 4.9 GHz. The next generation of AMD Ryzen processors use the Zen 4 microarchitecture released in 2022. Zen 4 uses the 5nm process for x86-based desktop processors for the first time. Thus, Ryzen 7000 processors can reach higher frequencies, keeping lower power consumption as low as possible. Ryzen 7000 processors are compatible with the latest technologies such as DDR5, PCIe 5.0 RAM compatibility, and the new socket used is AM5, equipped with 1018 pins, capable of supporting a TDP of up to 230W, and is compatible with AM4 cooling. Zen 4 architecture offers up to 15% higher performance in single-threaded scenarios, along with 10% increase in IPCs compared to the previous series, and multi-threaded performance is up to 35% higher than the previous generation. The new Ryzen processors come in 4 models, the top of the range being the AMD Ryzen 9 7950X. It is equipped with 16 cores and 32 execution threads, capable of reaching a boost frequency of 5.7 GHz. At the same time, AMD presented the roadmap for its processors until 2024, when Zen 5 will be launched under the name Granite Ridge and is believed to use TSM's 3nm process.